Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Something to Scream About with Distorted Views. Now, today, if you are watching already, you will notice that I am currently solo with a spot free on the couch. Here he is, actually. Cam was running a tiny bit late because the little boy.
Hey, hello.
Oh, look at his getup. So if you're not seeing this on video, you'll be missing out completely because
Really good shirt. Installs not really, but
Cody is decked out in a Distorted Views shirt, looking cute as ever in his little boots. Oh, hello, little fella. Hello. He's giving me a big smile. He knows this podcast is going to be an absolute one for the books again, doesn't he?
Say hello. 2 months old.
2 months old and doing well. Oh, he looks beautiful. I love the outfit.
I know, very good, isn't it?
That's wonderful.
Okay, that's enough star time for you.
enough time in the spotlight. You wait, he'll be a superstar before you know it. But today, yes, we have an incredible episode coming up. One of our probably favorite bands currently is Northlane, and welcome,
Hello.
Cam.
Hello.
We are lucky enough to be able to chat today with Nic Pettersen, the drummer of Northlane, and we're going to deep dive a little bit into all things kind of timing, practice, mindset, performance, all of these things that I myself have been learning and gaining some insight from Nic in our lessons and mentoring sessions. So it's been a pleasure to be working with him, and it's a pleasure to have him on. So we'll probably jump into that in a little bit. But first of all, let's do some housekeeping.
Housekeeping. Well, that's every time. No.
Do you know what's really funny is because I was in New Zealand on the weekend, and we were at this hotel, checked out in the morning, and there was a lady doing housekeeping.
Did she do the housekeeping?
And she went, housekeeping.
Yes, I do it every time. Every time.
Every time.
It's
Honestly,
the best.
I laughed out loud so hard. It was funny as.
Are we doing a podcast? What the fuck's going on?
I was like, so anyway, housekeeping is Cam.
Oh shit. Okay, so I don't know what what do we want to tell the people? Because there's a lot going on, but I don't know what's public information.
Enough came out
where we've got a potential second guitarist who's come into the band. Not doing press photos and all that stuff yet because, as you know, members come and go with commitments and timing and whether they fit the project or not. But this new guy's looking good, man. So, we're writing some new music with dual guitars. So 2 different guitars playing 2 different things at the same time just to give the songs more depth and layers.
Yeah,
so,
it really opens up. It opens up our ability to go back and bring some of the stuff that we were originally trying to do, and also include some new dual guitar stuff moving forward. So
I can do more vocals too.
That's wicked. Yes. But yeah, so Enough is out. Go stream Enough. If you haven't already, go check out the visuals that Cam has been smashing.
We're making some dope ones behind the scenes, ladies and gentlemen. It is going to be some cool stuff towards the end of the year. Some new visuals.
Yeah, so we're really working on trying to, put a visual identity towards this whole project and summarize it up in both, visuals, logos, text, photos, music, all of the above that creates this whole cohesive brand. We're trying to sort of really put that together at the moment and come up with something that looks schmicko. So you're doing super well on that so far, Cam.
Thanks, man.
Other than that, not much has been sort of happening. We've been working hard on our instruments, practicing, playing, trying to get as beastly as possible to be on stage very, very soon. So new things coming in terms of music and visuals and all that, but you'll see that in due course. Other than that,
come watch us live.
Come watch us live. But I was I'll hand us over to the wonderful interview with Nic Pettersen. So enjoy, and I hope you take away something really cool.
Something to scream about!
All right, so we have the wonderful Nic Pettersen joining us on today's show. How you going, bro?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. I think I speak for, Cam and myself, that, you guys as Northlane, and to have a representative of you guys, especially for me being biased as a drummer, it's really awesome to have you on. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you, bro.
No, thank you.
Today, I want to go a little bit of a deep dive into the things that make you tick as a musician, and the things that really kind of make up your thought process in terms of how you attack being a drummer and being a musician and part of the band Northlane. So first of all, I want to break it up into two parts. I want to sort of talk about maybe the practice side of things, and your as you are in your little home studio, and the things that you tend to work on and find work for you, and then how that translates into performance and playing the big shows and things like this. So first of all, in terms of practice, I know that in our lessons we've gone through a few things, but how do you think guys should effectively practice and make sure that they're really sticking to what's important in the practice room?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a really good question. And I think it changes per person, but I think there's also like a general sort of idea that you can copy and paste on that sort of works for most people that I've seen anyway. I think, I have a specific way in which I practice if I'm like learning new stuff for Northlane, and it's very sort of geared towards that environment specifically, considering how Northlane sort of writes. And I mean, from my experience with that, that's kind of been obviously a massive trial and error for me. And over the years of going through different records, I've kind of honed in further and further into sort of what works for me. And I've been lucky enough to be able to sort of try and apply that onto other people and see how it works outside of myself. And for the most part, I think it's really effective. And I guess I can go from there, just like how I would go about practicing myself, and sort of how seriously I take it and how I approach it all. And now, granted, this isn't like, this might not work for everyone. This is definitely geared towards like myself in terms of like how I learn. I'm a very visual learner. Now, I think everyone has different ways of learning, and figuring this out is always really handy, because then you can sort of lean into that. And personally, I find, reading is a really easy way for me to sort of pick up on stuff. And when I talk about reading, I mean like reading sheet music, essentially. But the process initially starts off with, like I said, like Northlane is very specific in terms of how we write and sort of go about those early phases of writing. Because John, the guitarist in Northlane, he's like the core songwriter, and he will send parts that are like, he already has like MIDI drums written over his riffs, so there's already like a core idea there initially. Now, for me, essentially, it's like sort of learning what this core idea is, and then being able to turn it into something that I see as my own, essentially. And sometimes that takes like drastic changes to what's already there. Sometimes small changes, and that's more to do with like sort of understanding what the song needs itself. But initially for me, I'll take these demos, and this can apply to like any sort of, if you're anyone learning a song or anything. Essentially the first thing I do is sort of write out the core ideas onto sheet music. I'm also aware that not everyone has the skills of doing something like this. This is not, you have to learn how to do something like this.
A valuable skill though, right?
I think so. It's like a dying art as well, right?
Yeah.
Just because like, people are capable of sort of MIDIing out parts so easy these days. And so personally for me, like that's like the first phase of learning something. It's like just writing out the core idea. It doesn't have to be perfectly written out in terms of like the whole song structure. It can just be like, you know, the verse idea, the chorus idea, bridge, so on and so forth. And that's first step, I think, is really important because it allows me or anyone else to sort of look at the part and see where all the hits are landing in relation to one another. So it kind of gives a visual map essentially. And like the process of like trying to write it out is like the first step of like understanding what's going on for me personally. Now, I've also seen that a lot of people who don't know how to read music, and they're generally more inclined to like listening to stuff and working off what they're hearing, which is also a cool way to do it. Personally, that's a slower way for me. But some people are really in tune with that sort of method, and just being able to listen to a part and then sort of play it. I find more errors in that sort of process. It's not as refined, not as detailed, but still doesn't mean you can't get to the end sort of the finish line, I guess. But personally, I try and you know, build from a core foundation. So I have like the core idea down. Essentially, I'm just trying to turn it into muscle memory. So once I've written it out, I'll then I've got some writing here. I've been working on some stuff lately.
Yeah,
so
we
can see. Quick screenshot.
So that's something that I've been working on, and I haven't yet played that on the kit. I've just sat there and written it out. The next step for me is actually going to the kit and just not even playing it to the song, just setting like a really low BPM and sort of just starting to build muscle memory off these core ideas. And by doing it like that, then I'm just learning the drum part on its own. There is no relation to the music at this point. I might have the, you know, the riff sort of playing in my head, but essentially I'm just listening to the part itself, and just turning that into muscle memory. And obviously I'll start slow with the BPM and slowly move up towards the tempo of the actual song. I'll actually probably even end up going faster than the song as well, probably up to 10 BPM faster, so that when I pull it back again, it feels a little bit easier.
Yeah, feels good, nice and comfortable. Yeah,
it's a good trick to learn. But like I said, that's very, you know, specific towards Northlane stuff for me. But at that point, you know, once I feel like I've got it up to the tempo of the song, that's when I feel like I can start to get creative with it, because by that point it should be muscle memory, and I shouldn't be the parts should just be sort of coming out of me. I'm not, you know, I'm sort of just letting it flow. Then I can sort of, I have like more room to think about like what I can do on top, what accents I can add in, or ghost notes or fills and stuff. And that's when I sort of allow myself to get creative with it.
That's really cool. So you're basically following the basic rhythmic concept given to you by John, and the riff that he's written to complement, similar to what happens in our process. Cam will write something
very similar.
MIDI drums, send me an idea, and then I'm basically trying to figure out whether it's playable and how to orchestrate it best and things like that. So
exactly.
that
cool.
That seems to work really well for me. And what I liked about what you said is, you know, you're kind of keeping the core idea so that you develop the muscle memory for that solid foundation, and then you can be creative around that. So going into that muscle memory and stuff, I remember you mentioning something about sleep and how that kind of works with your muscle memory and your effective chunks of practice and things to do that. So if there's a part that people find difficult, whether it's physically difficult or whatever it is, and they're coming up to it in their practice, every time you come up to this section in the song, you feel, oh, this is like the hard part. How do you best work around that muscle memory and, you know, incorporating in the sleep and things like that?
Yeah, cool. I'm glad you brought this up, because I think it's a really interesting sort of concept that I've sort of lent into over the last couple of years myself. So obviously, like, you know, when you're practicing something, whatever it might be, the idea of repetition comes into play. You know, learning anything, you want to repeat it and you want to do it consistently. Now, I think a lot of people think when they have to learn something, they've got to be practicing hours and hours each day to do so, which can be daunting, which can also sort of take the fun out of it a little bit, right? You can, it can turn it into a chore to some extent. I've definitely felt like that before, but never fear. There's other ways to do this. It doesn't take like monotonous practice, and this is, some people would say there's a cop out, but I honestly feel like it works really well. And this is to do with the sleep thing. So obviously, when you're trying to learn something, you want to do it. Ideally, you want to do it every day. And I think what most people think is doing it every day for multiple hours. I don't believe that anymore. I honestly think it's more so just reiterating the idea in your head every day, whether that be 5 minutes, half an hour, 2 hours. That's up to you. But I honestly think even just doing it 5 minutes a day is gonna make a huge difference. So say you're trying to learn something, and it's too fast for you, right? So what I do in this scenario is obviously work with a metronome. And I'll start off in a comfortable tempo, 90, 100 BPM. And I'll sit on that for, a minute or two, and then I'll bump it up 5 BPM. Sit on that for another minute or two, or 5 minutes, whatever. Bump it up again. By doing this, you're obviously like 5 BPM increments, almost like unnoticeable. So it's a really good, like 10 BPM, it's definitely noticeable. 5 is only just noticeable. So it's a really good sort of leap to sort of help you push your tempo. Now, you might have an end goal of 150 BPM. And on your first day, you sit there for hours trying to get it to that tempo, and you can't, you're doing this sort of approach where you're bumping up the BPM. You might find yourself getting to 120 and you can't play it solid. You can't play it perfectly for a minute. You keep making little mistakes here and there. That's okay. That's perfectly fine, right? At that point, what I do is I have like a little journal, and I'll write down, I got to 120 BPM this section today. If you go back to it again tomorrow and just do the same process, it might take you 5 or 10 minutes, just starting again back at like 90 or 100 and then bumping up 5 BPM at a time. Within a day or two, you're going to be 5 or 10 BPM faster than that first day where you found yourself struggling at 120. I guarantee it. And now this also, obviously, like the daily repetition is just like, you're just looking at this every day and getting it, solidified in your head. But I also learned from watching this documentary, I can't quote which documentary it is because I can't remember the name of it, but I found it really interesting, which is about sleep and learning. And I'll try and cut this story as short as possible. But basically, what these scientists did, they were experimenting on rats to figure out different ideas to do with sleep. And during the day, they had these rats going through a maze, and the maze was the same maze every time they did it. And there was some cheese at the end of it. They also had like some sort of brain scanner on this rat's head or mouse or whatever it was. And it could sort of see the brain triggering when it was turning left and when it was turning right. Essentially, the rat learnt the path of this maze. He's got really good at it. Whatever it was, left, right. And it would do it throughout the day. And it would sort of light up different areas of the brain depending on whether it was turning left or right. What they noticed while the rat was sleeping, they kept this brain scanner on. It was actually firing through this map of left, right, left, right, whatever it was, as it was sleeping, but like 3-4 times faster than how it was doing it throughout the day. Then they noticed the next day, the rat was faster at going through the maze off the bat. Essentially, what they discovered is that just by having a good night's sleep, essentially you can get like up to 30% better at something that you were working on the day before, just because your brain is going through the process of repeating what you were doing again. So if you can trust that you're going to do this every day, whether it be 5 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, and you have a good night's sleep and come back to it the next day, I promise that you'll feel better at it.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, it's weird how it works, and it 100% works. I've tested on myself and other people, and it fully works. So
yeah, I can back that myself.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's interesting.
It's subconscious or something. It's crazy. It's like you're thinking about it and then envisioning it, and then it's becoming true.
Yeah, it's the
absolutely.
I heard of one of the recent podcasts from Andrew Huberman. I don't know if you know of him, but he's a neuroscientist and did a exact podcast on this recently about the sleep and the learning patterns. I think you'd find it super interesting. Yeah. So he was talking about this, and he was talking that there's actually effects on the second and third night as well. They're just not as profound. And if, say, for example, the first night you don't get quality sleep, or, something happens, you still get benefits on that second and third night onwards after doing that repetition. But you're right, it compounds if you do it daily. And then he said there's a specific, more optimal window in terms of time, like you were suggesting before, not doing it for hours and hours and hours, having a certain amount of really concentrated, focused attention on it for 20 minutes, half an hour, 40 minutes or something like this, and then leave it and move on to something else.
Cool.
I might have to send that to you because it's well worth a listen.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, so that sort of thing plays into the muscle memory, and then you can build it up and get faster, and then all of a sudden you're getting to a point where you can play all of these things and that kind of stuff. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that because I know that you find that really fascinating, as do I. Going back a little bit just before, you were talking about the writing process and then figuring out and practicing your parts on the drums, allowing yourself to be creative at a certain point. A lot of your drum beats and Northlane riffs, I guess, to a certain extent, have this kind of odd time feel or some form of maybe metric modulation in there. Just tell me a little bit briefly about that kind of process. Is that coming from the riff itself? Is this a team arrangement, or are you allowing yourself to try and throw in a bit of your, drumming kind of knowledge and putting some odd timings or feels in there?
A bit of flavor.
Well, I think honestly, for the most part, it comes from John. And it's personally, I find it really interesting working with John because I find I'm a very sort of theoretical musician. I grew up being taught by multiple different teachers, obviously know how to read and write, and also have learned all the boundaries that come with learning music, right? Which is an interesting concept in itself because there shouldn't really be any. But working with someone like John, who essentially, is a clean slate when it comes to like music, he didn't really get a lot of guidance. He sort of just taught himself how to play guitar and to write. And he's, because of that, he's a very free writer, and he hasn't learnt these boundaries that I think a lot of musicians have, right? And especially to do with the drums. So like obviously he just programs drums and he does it off what sounds good to him. So he's not thinking like what we might be thinking, which is like
human play.
Put the backbeat on.
Right. Like where's that snare landing? Or like, I can't really go there because of my setup, or that's not, that wouldn't feel nice. None of that's in his head. It's just about what sounds good. And obviously it's my job to sort of figure out how to make it playable and comfortable. But because of that sort of boundless approach, he comes up with these really interesting polyrhythms that I don't think a lot of the time he's even really noticing what's going on theoretically, which is why I think it works really well, because it's not overthought. It's just based on like what feels good to him. And then when I sit there and listen to it, I'm like, holy fuck, dude, like this is like a 5/4 polyrhythm, like, you know. Oh, you've done like Heart Machine. Whoa, you did that. You metrically modulated that at the back there in that breakdown. He's like,
He's
what
like,
the
huh?
fuck are you talking about?
So true.
No, yeah, and so that's just brilliance in my mind, because most musicians would have to think deeply about doing something like that and like approach it probably with the thought in mind, you
To
know,
do
with the
it.
perceived idea initially, yeah, and then trying to sort of create it, whereas he's just sort of letting it happen. So that's why I feel like it feels very smooth, and sometimes a lot of people are questioning what time signatures we're playing in, and a lot of the time it's just in 4/4. It might just be a polyrhythm or metric modulation that makes it feel different, or it's just like random accents, you know, and
Yeah.
that's and the pattern might loop over a certain amount of bars, so it feels like it's almost random.
Yeah. Would you
And
then play around with your parts to sort of like, so you might get given, say, for example, a part that John's written and it might be slightly either unplayable or unnatural or whatever. Do you then
Yeah.
just try and bring in a couple of elements that give it that predictability and consistency so that your general listener can sort of follow along to a beat? Is that, or a pulse?
Absolutely, yeah. So when I then take it and do my thing with it and sort of break it down, I am then sort of recognizing what's going on. I'm like mapping it out in my head. I'm like, okay, this part's 3/4 polyrhythm. That's happening in a lot of Northlane songs.
Yeah.
John naturally does that very, very often. And that, you know, just by recognizing what sort of accent pattern is happening, that will already immediately give me an idea of like how I can go about playing it. Obviously, I want everything to feel really good when I'm playing it. Like that's a big lesson that I learned over the years of being in Northlane, is that parts should feel good over sounding good. And that's probably not the best way to say it, but what I mean by feel good is more so like how it's played on the drum kit. If it feels nice to play, if it's easy to sort of get this part around the kit, whether it be a fill or a beat or something, the easier it is to sort of play, the more feel you can give it, and the more confidence you can have playing it. The more technical it is, then, you know, the harder it is to nail every time you play it live. And I know many musicians would understand this, and we kind of touched on it before, where, you know, you might create like this speed bump in your set where there's this big fill, or there's this one section that's really fast, and it becomes like a mental speed bump, right? Where you go like, every time you play it, you're like, oh, here's that song with that bloody part, and you kind of predict it coming, and you know, you might race through this fill every time, and
breaks the flow state almost.
Absolutely, and it adds this pressure, right? And the part might be really cool and technical and whatnot, and might really tick the boxes for all the music nerds out there. But if you end up stumbling over it every time, or even if you don't, but it creates like anxiety within yourself, to me, that's not helping you at all. And there's always different ways to write something and to sort of adapt something so that it feels good. It can still achieve the same sound as the original idea, but to you, it feels smooth. So that's kind of like what I'm doing. And obviously, when you have someone like John who's just writing drum parts for how they should sound, obviously there's no thought into like, how is this to be played on the drum? Does it feel good to be played? Now, he does sort of think about this these days, but that's essentially my job to like take the part. Okay, cool. There's 3 cymbals on this one here. That's going to change. This feels really cool, but
I've only got 2 arms. Okay.
Yeah. So it's at that point. Yeah, right. Your computers, your MIDI drums are nailing this fill, but getting a human to do it is another problem. And it doesn't mean that it's impossible, but it's more so like looking out for future you know, and thinking, am I going to stumble on this every night when I play it? Like for instance, for me personally, both our first 2 records, Discoveries and Singularity, were very technical on drums, and so is previous, records that came after that. But I found that I was trying to flex a lot, trying to prove myself, which was cool and part of the sound, I guess. But I did end up creating all these like speed bumps throughout songs where I'd be like, oh, this section's so weird. It's so hard to play tight, and or I keep mucking up this fill. So I learned early on that, and it's, there's another element to that where it's like sort of playing your role in the band. And I think a lot of the time people try and serve themselves rather than serve the song. And that also plays into it, right? And once you can sort of understand that you're in a team here together with a band, and the song is the goal
the
here,
and end all above
so
everything
spot
else.
on, man.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we talk about it.
We had this conversation yesterday.
Yeah.
Every time we have a guest on, like that's a part of a band that's doing well, it's so funny how we had Jaden from Steps on like a few months ago, a year ago now, and you guys just say all the things that we literally talk about. It's just mind blowing that all of these musicians across the world like have the same things that work and click, and they just know.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people end up falling into like the same issues, right? Where they try and impress every demographic of music, and that can't be done. I think in the end, you just got to focus on like what you think is cool, and that might sound selfish or whatnot, but like it's authentic. Then it's if you're writing for yourself and what you like to hear, and then there's going to be an element of authenticity there that might not be there if you're writing to impress.
Yeah. I've noticed you sort of treat your practice too. I've noticed from just listening to you talk, you kind of treat it, in my opinion, I'm taking it from like a workout almost, like how you're talking about writing to your strengths and writing down, yesterday I got to like 120 BPM, and you're putting it on paper. And that's the way that you work, and you're almost tying the music to your own personal character of what works specifically for you. And I think that's really important too, because what that's telling me is that you're not practicing in the dark, which I use that term a lot with when I'm trying to teach people guitar and stuff. They practice all the time, but they just practice in the dark. They just sort of go in a random direction. It's like if you're in the ocean, you swim down, you swim left, you swim right, you're going to drown. But if you swim up, you'll reach the surface, sort of thing. It's like only one way is going to work really for you. And it's finding that what works. And that's just hearing you speak. It's like you've seemed to found what clicks. And that's just wanted to point that out for the viewers and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, obviously everyone's individual, and everyone will learn differently. And one thing might work better for someone and not so well for someone else. And it's just a matter of trying and trial and error, right? And figuring out like how what's the best approach for you. Obviously over the years, like I've learnt the hard way through things, whether it be like not being prepared enough for the studio, or writing parts that are really tricky and hard to nail every time. These kind of things you have to pick up on and take note of, I think, and be like, okay, that was cool, I guess. It sounds cool on the record, but is it hindering me every night? Yeah. Well, is that a good thing? No. So and is there other ways to approach that? Like you can rewrite anything, but no matter how technical it is, you could still take the core concept and rewrite it in a way that feels better and still achieve the same idea. It's just, you just got to think about it, you just got to be willing to take a different approach.
That's right, bro. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that, and I appreciate your insight on that. One thing you touched on before again was, well, I think Cam mentioned it, was flow state. And obviously all of this practice, the amalgamation of your muscle memory and your workout every day and practicing these parts and whatever, getting into the point where you can just sit there and play the part. It comes out naturally. You can focus on more of the groove and the timing, the feel, that kind of stuff. You can get to this position of what we're all referring to as flow state, right? So can you just go into a little bit about how you see kind of like, what flow state is a little bit, and then how do you go about maintaining that moving from the practice room to the live show, where, you know, we spoke about last week about how playing as part of the Slipknot tour being a big thing for you guys, and having a lot of nerves and sort of anticipation for a show like this. How do you try and keep that flow state from the practice room through to a gig like that?
Yeah, no, this is an interesting topic, really, because being, I guess, essentially, like, the way I see the flow state is like being purely in that moment, right? Which I think as musicians we are in that sort of headspace a lot more than maybe the average human being. Just because playing an instrument, you have to focus in on what you're doing. Inherently, by doing that, puts you in the moment, where you're not thinking about anything, whether it be from the past or predicting anything for the future. You're literally just in that moment thinking about what's happening in that very second. Now, obviously, doing all this practice is like really important to creating the muscle memory, because without muscle memory, flow state ain't happening. Essentially, what you want to get everything to the point where, you don't need guide, you don't need your sheet music to be playing it. It's sort of, you just it's just happening. You're playing along to the song, and all the hits just happen naturally. And obviously that's from practicing it and sort of building the muscle memory, knowing parts and where the parts are going. Now, obviously, once you're at that point where you're no longer thinking about what's happening, it's more so you're like thinking about the timing of things, right? All of a sudden, you're not thinking about how to play something. It's more so you're not thinking about what you're playing. You start to think about how you're playing it. And I think that's a huge leap, right? Because for the practice, while you're practicing, you're thinking about what you're playing. You're thinking about the independence, or what symbol you're going to, what toms you're using. But once you turn into muscle memory, it shifts into like, all of a sudden, you know, how are you playing this part? Are you trying to drop the dynamics down and really sort of build it into this next section, right? And those thoughts can't really happen until the muscle memory's there, right? And then you can start to really hone into like manipulating the feel of the parts. And inherently, you know, the flow state just sort of comes with that. Now, a lot of people talk about it and think like, how do I get there, kind of thing. I'm never thinking that, you know, I'm never thinking, I've got to get into the flow state for this.
It won't happen otherwise.
Yeah, totally. It's just a byproduct of being focused on what you're doing. Obviously taking, you know, and obviously practicing something and getting it to the point where you're super comfortable, and you're able to sort of nail the song every time you play it at home is great. And that's exactly where you want to get it. But then taking that and putting it into a live presence, all of a sudden there's this essence of pressure there that wasn't there before. And I guarantee every musician deals with this same things. The idea of people watching you, the idea of you playing perfectly in front of people, or you not making mistakes in this part, whatever it is, all of a sudden this pressure just arises. And that's purely from just playing live. And replicating this pressure is really hard. It's really, really hard. And a lot of people can feel like, I was nailing this at rehearsal, and then I went and played it live, and I was just like, I sort of fell apart. And I guarantee everyone's felt that before. And that's really demoralizing, right? Because you felt really confident. I've been practicing this really well. You get to, you know, half an hour before you play, you're like, oh my God, I'm getting real nervous. It's, you know, there's lots of people here or whatever. Or like, the girl I likes here, or the guy I likes here, whatever it is, you know, and all of a sudden this essence of pressure just gets applied to what you're doing, and it can really derail some people. There is the only way I've found to practice within this pressure, right? The only thing that I can find that gets close to it is filming yourself with the intention that you're going to post it online. I think it's really important to have that intention. Whether you do it or not is up to you. But by doing that, essentially, you're creating an environment where it feels like you're being watched.
Yeah, I heard a
that.
similar thing from Craig Reynolds from Straight from the Path, watching him start live streaming all of his practice sessions. He now says that he's playing much better live just from rehearsing on a live stream and just having people watch him. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I believe it. Absolutely believe it. That would be another great way to practice in that environment. But obviously, taking this to the stage is another thing, and playing in front of people is something that you have to learn to do, right? It's not. I mean, there are people who just inherently are very natural in a live situation, but I feel like most people are awkward initially, and they have to learn to be comfortable, right, and learn to trust themselves and trust their playing. And then they can start to express themselves on stage once you sort of break that initial weird barrier. Now, once you do break that and you sort of get comfortable in your environment and you realize, you know what, it's not about them, it's about me. And if I'm comfortable, if I'm in my own world, then hopefully they will feel that energy and they will reciprocate it, and then I can reciprocate it back. And all of a sudden there's this energy in the room. And you're free to just be expressive in whatever way it might be on top of playing your instrument. And essentially that's when you end up in that sort of flow state. And I guarantee there won't be a moment where you're like, I'm in there. I'm getting barreled by the flow state right now.
I'm in the flow state, guys.
It's like I actually think by the end of the set, you might be like, high-fiving all your bandmates and then think I can't remember what just happened. I don't remember this specific moment or that moment. And that's when I was getting barreled by the flow state.
Yeah. That push-pull energy as well. Like, I love that, like we were talking about with the crowd, and, when the music is like, it's just coming out of you, and like what you said, if you're thinking about, I need to hit the kick and then the snare and then the chana, it's like, if you're just doing it, then you're just expressing yourself and your creativity, as well as the guitars, as well as the vocals, all the subtle fry and the false chord and the winding in and out of the notes, and the maybe some yodeling type stuff I do of my own vocals of trying to like make the voice break and all of these cool things. You're just expressing yourself and not trying to be pitch perfect or note perfect. And then the crowd screams, and that makes, and then you see someone pull a stank face during a breakdown. You're like, and you fucking play a bit harder or something. You hit the snare a bit harder, and it's just this constant energy, push, pull, push, pull, push, pull.
Yep.
So I love that.
It allows you to work within the other guys in the band and sort of like bounce off each other with energy.
Absolutely,
and stuff, right?
absolutely.
And then the crowd, I guess too, if you're close enough to be able to see them, and your drums.
Yeah, your stage you probably can't. On our stages, that
I can see every single person in the crowd,
and if they're not happy, you know about it.
Yeah, it's like, Mum, smile.
Please.
Please smile, Mum. So if you're then you're up on stage and things like this, one of the things that you mentioned with the you've got a part coming up where you might fluff it sometimes, or as you told me last week, you might see somebody in the crowd and they're kind of not looking happy, and then all of a sudden you think, why aren't they happy? Are they not enjoying the music? Did I mess something up? Or like, give me an insight into your techniques to bring yourself back out of like, okay, I just screwed up that fill. Don't dwell on it. Obviously, you want to keep moving and this type of thing, but there's all these things going off. The pyro might go off too close to you, or I don't know.
Loud noises.
It's a really interesting topic, I think, because obviously, whenever you make a mistake in front of people, it's embarrassing, and essentially, I feel like most people end up being their harshest critics. And I think this is a good thing if you're your harshest critic, right? And you take it seriously enough to sort of hate that you made a mistake. I think that's a really good thing. If you don't give a shit, then improvement probably won't happen. That error will probably happen again.
Preach.
So, taking it seriously and actually... Well, the problem with taking it so seriously is that you actually probably beat yourself up for making those errors.
Yeah.
And the byproduct of that is that you kind of end up in the same. You continue playing the song and into the next song, but your mind might still be back there thinking, oh my God. Like, for instance, when we're overseas, playing in Glasgow. It's a really big show, and we open with a song called Clarity, and there's this big fill at the start that goes into like a breakdown, essentially. And for whatever reason, I just blanked it and didn't play the fill, and then just went straight into the breakdown. And I was just like, okay, that was weird. I don't know why I just didn't play that. And I really like this fill as well. And I just hated myself for it. She's like, you idiot. Why did you know? And then I couldn't move past that. And I think this just happens with most people, right? They just get stuck in that same spot, and it kind of ruins the rest of the set. And especially difficult in the first song. Essentially, trying to let go is the best thing to do, obviously. It's easier said than done. Personally, I just try and like I almost feel like the emotions still stay there, but I try and use them to my advantage. So when I get sort of pissed off, I try and really start to push that into my playing a little bit more.
Do that as well.
It's a good way to sort of direct that energy. And then I try and just think about what I'm playing in that moment. Now, it's actually more so like listening to what I'm playing, if that makes sense. So I'm just sort of listening, and I usually listen to cymbals, and I listen to the decay of cymbals. And by doing this, it inherently puts me in the moment by just listening and trying to replicate like the and obviously I've got a click track in my ear so I can play that. But if I can make this sound happen perfectly every time, I'm kind of just tricking myself into just thinking about that and not thinking about what's happened before, right? So now these are techniques that, I've learned over the years of like trying to put myself either playing bang on the beat or behind the beat, or like sort of manipulating the feel a little bit by listening to what I'm playing. It's a good way to sort of play tight as well. Is just obviously this can't happen until you've made something muscle memory. Once again, to go back to that, has to be at that point where it's coming out of you too. So it's more, the difference between like what you're playing and how you're playing. Again, you're thinking about how consistent you're hitting this cymbal or this snare drum or kick pattern or whatever. Obviously, I'm going to relate this to drums, the things I know, but I'm sure it's going to be copied and pasted for other instruments.
Are you hearing that? Just real quick.
Yeah, don't worry about it if it doesn't come through on the thing. It started crackling once before, and it's all good. It'll fix itself.
Okay.
Sorry, keep going.
That's all right. Where was I? So once we were talking about.
No, that's okay. What I'll do? No, that's okay.
No, it's all right. It's all right.
It's just real bad in my ear. I'm like, I don't want to spoil.
Okay. Is it my mic? Is it?
No. It's
okay.
Zoom did this after like half an hour, 40 minutes last time. So don't stress. What I'll do is I'll ask you one last question to wrap this up. Because we've done super well so far.
Can I tell them a quick story?
Yeah, go for it.
Just to relate, just what you did, Mr. Phil, on our very first show we ever played, and on the very first note that the guitar played, I dropped my pick.
My God!
And then I was just like, "Gee," and I just looked down at the picks on the floor, and I was like, "Shit!" And I was doing vocals at the same time, so I played with my thumb. The whole set, not the whole set, sorry, the whole song until the song was finished, and my thumb was killing me, and I was like, fuck. I thought that was a funny story. Anyway,
just derailed yourself. It's hard. It's so hard to recover from things like that, but
now I carry extra picks in my pocket
must go on.
in case that happens again.
Yeah.
Smart. So you only learn, right? You
learn. That's it.
Yeah, that's right. So last question to wrap this up, bro. Just going off the sort of, I guess you were saying while you write your parts and you get your beats together, you get your element of creativity comes into it. Is that sort of how you develop your identity as a drummer on the drum kit? Obviously, it has to work within, as we said, for the song, and you know, at the end of the day, you're writing to make the best music possible, not the best drum part. But sort of how, I personally see you as a drummer who has a somewhat of a unique identity on the kit, and I can sort of tell that that's Nic's way of playing, and other drummers have this as well. So what sort of ways do you see people finding their identity on an instrument, full stop, not just drums? And what's worked for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I haven't. Well, I think when I was younger, I was really inspired by a bunch of musicians, which sort of created the mold of who I am now, I think. And these various musicians sort of opened my eyes to like different approaches to things and allowed me to think, okay, I can go there or I can go here. And I feel like I'm almost just like the combination of choices that I noticed these people making, and I adapted that to what I like. I liked this guy doing this, and I liked how this guy did this, and I sort of took those ideas and then just applied them to my own drumming. And I didn't do this purposefully. I just think this happened just because I was inspired by these people or these bands. So obviously, like me learning those songs and of these various artists when I was younger was like almost the first phase of me becoming me, because I was learning how these people approached their parts. And then over time, I think I just sort of trusted my intuition when it came to how I should approach something. And this was just based off like what I'd learnt was possible from other people, I think. This is a long-winded answer. I might.
No, that's all good.
It's a bit weird, but so the first drummer that I was obsessed with was John Otto from Limp Bizkit, and what I found he taught me was like groove and like how to just sit in the pocket and play the groove.
Take him to the
that was really, really important. Yeah, right. Hype. It's like nothing huge, It's huge. It's huge, and it makes you bounce and stuff. And like, there's nothing there that's like overly complicated or complex about it. Yet it still evokes these feelings within people. And then Steve Judd from Carnival sort of opened my mind to like a lot of different polyrhythmic ideas that can be played over straight parts. Yeah. So that's when I started learning how to sort of, limb independence, I guess, when it comes to playing, whether your snare and kick would be in 4, but then the right hand is sort of playing in different groupings over the top of that and getting comfortable doing those things. And now I feel like that comes out in my playing just in like certain little pockets. I almost use that as like fills sometimes, or like just a way to sort of break away from a beat subtly, and then just being comfortable within these sort of groupings as well. And then Brandon Morgan, the drummer from Misery Signals, sort of changed my thought process on how to approach metal drumming in general. He sort of came at it from a very, I guess, jazz sort of approach. It wasn't like traditional, hands going straight all the time and just kick pedals. Like he was doing a lot of linear fills, a lot of
kind
interesting
of
sort of
stuff and like all sorts of things.
Yeah, totally. And then that sort of really inspired me to sort of go more into that sort of area of drumming where I could learn more chops and implement that in a way that on the kit that could be that could be digestible within metal, essentially.
No, that's right.
Then,
No, you're just taking all these influences that you've gotten over the years, and like similarly, I guess we all do that from the music that we listen to, and
absolutely,
and people we look up to, and I guess learning off you, I learn a little bits and pieces I'll take, and then other guys I get lessons off and watch stuff. You just pick up things, and my upbringing in jazz and that kind of thing makes my playing a certain way, and your body shape and the way you lay into grooves and all of this, and the orchestration, the way you choose your kit, all of this kind of thing, it brings together this sound as a drummer or as a musician that becomes you, and you sort of lean into these things that work and that you like, and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Does that sort of ring true?
Absolutely, yeah. Because you might think like, you might be writing something and it might make you think, oh wow, this sounds so misery signals. Like, how would Brandon Morgan play this sort of section? You know, and even though you're thinking, how has this guy played this? It's actually you that's still coming up with that, and that person inspired you to think down those parallels, right?
Yeah,
and that's you. That is you. You've taken inspiration, but what's coming out and your choices are all you. You've made all those choices, even though it might be inspired by someone else. The outcome is still you. So, I think a lot of time, how do you, create an identity? I think you just got to follow your instincts, and your instincts are built off your inspirations to an extent, right? And trust, you might even have those black and white sort of thoughts of like, how would this person approach this? Or you might just be like, I learned this fill from this Misery Signal song. I'm just going to play this here. And, literally, you might steal some idea completely. And maybe you write the back end of the fill slightly differently. And then all of a sudden you've created it. That is still you. That's still you, right? And without you, that would never have been created, whether it was inspired by someone or not. So,
No, bro, that's perfect answer. So let's wrap this up. I know you've got a few things to head into, but thank you very much for taking the time out to come and be on the podcast. We really appreciate all of your insight. Obviously, we'll chuck some links down below to all of the stuff that you're involved in. But if there's any budding drummers out there who are keen on a lesson, hit Nic up. And I don't know whether you've got any spots left at the moment, but
at the moment I do. So
I know you're a busy man. So I want to plug, go and get some insight into this man, because he's a book full of knowledge. So once again, really, really appreciate it, man. And we'll
my
see
pleasure.
you soon.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Legends.
you,
brother.
Hell yeah.
Something to scream about. So that was Nic.
Yes. That was a properly brilliant conversation, and I believe we could have spoken for hours and hours and hours to Nic. He's got so much to share, and like we said, we appreciate him coming on.
Might have him back part 2 in like a year or something.
I'd love to sort of hear how some of those progressions of thoughts continue on, and looking into all of that stuff about sleep and practice and things. And like, there's lots that I've learned in my time with Nic about how to deal with all of these distractions on stage, and how to prep yourself with all the nerves that come with this kind of, playing such... playing such like strict music. You can't improvise. It is what it is. You're playing the notes, and I think I've taken away some really good lessons from Nic in terms of being able to perform those live. So it was an awesome episode. Have you got anything that you want to add from what Nic said today?
Just if you're not a drummer yourself and you listen to this today, like myself, just take away what you can and apply it to the guitar, or apply it to your voice for vocals, or the bass, or even just general life. So you might not even be a musician and you just like this podcast, which would be really cool as well. Maybe just take away, if you want to get good at something, don't overcomplicate it, keep at it, get good sleep, and, keep going, don't quit.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, we might leave it there, but if you want to support the podcast, go give us a rating somewhere where the podcast is out. Drop some comments onto our socials and give us some suggestions who you'd like to see, or just share some of the clips around with friends. We really appreciate any help that comes our way in terms of that. As for next month's podcast, we'll be seen as to who that is, but might have a few suggestions from you guys and who to bring on. But otherwise, I want to go into visuals with you, Cam, and maybe talk about a bit about that. So something to look forward to anyway. So thanks for listening / watching, and we'll see you again next time.
Bye.
Bye.